Daylight breaks over the ridge. The hounds strike. No crowds, no cameras, just a track and the hounds that bring the story to life. That's what this show's about. Dogs, dirt roads, early mornings, and the people who live it. This is Creekside Chronicles. Hounds, hunting, and heritage. I am your host, Heath Hyatt, houndsman, hunter, and a lifelong student of the outdoors. Here, we chase more than game. We chase knowledge about hounds, hunting, and living the outdoor life the right way. From bear country to back roads, this is where the hunt meets heart, and every story runs a different trail. So pull up your chair by the creek, leash up your best hound, and let's get after it together. Performance starts in the feed. Inukshuk's high-fat content fuels long runs and hard hunts, giving dogs the steady energy they need, while quality protein supports faster recovery after the work is done. That's why I trust Inukshuk dog food. Packed with energy and nutrition dogs need to go further, run harder, and recover stronger. If you want extreme performance, you can look them up at Inukshuk Professional Dog Food or Corey.ca. Welcome back to the Creekside, where we talk about everything from the woods to the water. We talk about it all. If you've been listening along, you're a part of the Creekside crew. So pull out that chair while I throw another log on the fire, and let's get this episode started. So this morning started as a test of character. Or maybe it was just poor decision making on my part. Went out on the creek, do a little trout fishing, and it was in the kind of cold that makes you question every life choice that led you there. The kind of cold where your hands take turns in one pocket thawing out, while the other one's in the wild pretending it belongs on your body. And just when you think you got that rhythm going, nope. Ice builds up on them islets, fishing pole, and it's like nature's way of saying, "You sure you want to do this?" That's how I felt. And the trout? Yeah, they were there, technically. Just sort of bumping the bait, kind of like a window shopper. No intentions of buying. Real commitment issues on the creek that morning. But I got into a good show. These geese, they're there every time I go fishing on this creek. And one of them suddenly flies in, swoops down, does his little glide up the water like he's skiing. Boom. Full Olympic diver. Straight down, tail up, no hesitation. And when I'm standing there thinking, what in the world are you after? And do you need help? Because the bird stayed underwater way longer than anything with feathers should have. Meanwhile, right across the creek, old Mama Goose, she's perched up there on a rock about 10 foot above the water, looking like a grumpy landlord guarding a questionable piece of real estate. And then, just when I was about ready to negotiate with my fingers to keep going, that sun popped up over that ridge, crept in, and it was like flipping a switch. That whole creek bottom got a little warmer. The cold backed off just enough to feel human again. Steam was rising, the light hit the water just right, and it was almost enough to make you forget that your hands were on the verge of filing a formal complaint, because mine were. Almost. I caught a couple trout, had a couple get off, which I blame on my fingers that were being numb at the time. But it was a good morning, even though I still question my life decisions. And that's how today began. Now let's talk a little bit about dogs. You ever had that young dog that you just can't quite put your finger on? He's almost putting things together. Maybe he's overrunning a few tracks, blowing out of the race, making some mistakes over and over. You get that feeling you want to step in. You either want to tone them, pull them off, redirect them, help them. There is nothing more frustrating than a dog that close, but just can't seem to put it together. But I've learned through years of mistakes that sometimes it ain't the dog that's the problem. It's how much we try to control the process, the development. So I'll tell you a story about one of my young dogs. You heard me talk about my little blue female, Belle, who through my career of hound hunting has been one of my better dogs. Boy, I sure like to have her back and turn her loose again. She got a dog that's got all the tools. Got a good nose, got plenty of drive, wants to hunt. But maybe they're just making them mistakes. You don't understand exactly what's going on. So Belle, she was a young dog. In fact, I actually told this story the other day. Actually, I have the picture. I have the picture that's over the visor of my hunting truck. And I don't know why it ended up there. But every time I pull my visor down, I get to see Belle and Clyde, which are my two blue dogs. And back years ago, when things were a little different, the world was different, we used to go to the bear bays where they actually used real bear. And Belle was not a year old. She was probably eight months old at the time, and Clyde was probably 6 months. I've got the picture of them, and they are face to face with a live bear doing their thing, baying and working. And I set that in motion because when I tell this story, you got to understand what I'm thinking. So when Belle was about 4 months old, my dad had a couple of barn cats and bobtail cats, and they'd run around the barn lot. And at the time, that's where I kept my dogs. And I'd let her run loose. When I'd go up to feed, I'd always turn them out, let them run loose. If I was there on a weekend, on a Saturday or Sunday, I'd let them loose for the majority of the day. And Belle got to running those barn cats. Of course, we had a ladder that went up into the loft where you just put the hay. And they would run up that ladder. And Belle would sit at the bottom of that ladder and just, tree on them. And that was at 4 months old. So she's gamey. She has the desire. She has the prey drive we want. She has the stuff that we're looking for. And at 8 months old, she's in a pen with a 300-pound bear. She's not giving an inch. She's smart enough to know I don't get within arm's reach. But she was in there doing what we want our dogs to do. So the first year I hunted her, I spent a lot more time coon hunting her. And I know I've told the story, so we won't relive it to the fullest details. But at 18 months old, I was hunting one night. Belle struck a track in a briar thicket where they had just done a timber cut. And she trailed that track through that timber cut, briar thicket, out across an open field, into a small patch of woods, out onto an open field, up into a ridge side, a wood line, and fell treed. And when I got in there, she had 4 or 5 coons up a tree. I mean, it looked like Christmas lights when you shine your light up in there. There was eyeballs everywhere. And I was a proud dad at that point. Like, it's one of those times you sit down and you just embrace the moment. But we go to the bear woods, and we're bear hunting. And Belle, in between that 1.5 and 2-year-old time frame, you could turn her loose on a bear track. She'd trail it, and she would get to where the bear jumped. And you know that scent picture changes. You know, at the point in time, I didn't understand. I didn't know. And I can't tell you that I was somewhat of any type of a trainer back then. I just hunted hard. I just put my dogs in the woods and went. So she would get to where the bear jumped, and she'd turn around and she'd backtrack right back to where you turned her loose. Frustrating. Very frustrating. But that's what she did. So that went on for the training season part of that year. And I talked to several people. Several people told me that just get rid of her. She's not going to make, she's not going to do what she needs to do. She's never going to make it. But because my emotional attachment to that dog, remember we talked about that a couple podcasts ago when I talked about pack evaluation? And I didn't even evaluate dogs at that time. I just hunted them. I hunted the hair off of them. So during December, they jumped a bear out of a bed. Everybody that bear hunts knows what I'm talking about. And called it immediately. And Belle was on that hunt. And from that day forward, she never missed a beat. I didn't have to worry about her running backwards. She never done it again. And the reason I'm talking about this is because that was the turning point. And I want to talk about letting the dogs learn on their own versus overhandling. And I can tell you examples of both. I see a lot of overhandling in the canine world. Guys want to help their dogs, especially in the detection side of it. On the tracking side, they're just trying to outsmart their dogs, and they think they know what the dog is doing without actually reading the behavior of the dog. So it is a huge factor in the law enforcement side. So yeah, she switched. She flipped. She turned. I didn't step in. Back then, I told you, I didn't have shocking collars, the e-collars. We couldn't tone dogs. You had to run them down and catch them. And sometimes that was harder said than done. But what happened is she self-discovered. She learned on her own. And one thing that I do remember vividly is I kept asking myself, she trails coons, she trees coons. She didn't back away from that bear in the bear bays. She didn't give. So what's going on the other end of it? Why is she doing this? And I never could answer that question because I didn't understand a lot of things then. But I knew that I really liked her. And I knew that she had all the tools that I was looking for. So I continued to hunt her. I let her figure out on her own. Did I know that she was going to do that? No, I did not. But I'd already made up in my mind that she was a super nice coon dog if she didn't work out on bears, so it would be okay. But because I kept giving her opportunities, kept giving her learning lessons and opportunities to learn on her own, she figured it out. I didn't have to do nothing but turn her loose. That's it. So let's talk about overhandling. Sometimes we need to step out of the way. We need to let the dogs self-discover. You hear me talk about that a lot because it is the best learning tool for a dog. And I'll give you a good example of overcorrection or being too involved. If you're the person that is walking out of the woods, and we see people posting videos and posting pictures, and you've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dogs, and you're walking back to your truck from a hunt, from a tree, whatever it may be, and you are constantly hollering at the dogs, come here, here, come here, because we do it. You're not training the dogs properly, first and foremost, and second of all, you're not accomplishing anything. So dogs learn from being in the situation. You can slow down a dog mentally by doing too much handling, right? Let's go back to my bee litter, and I'll give you a very short example of this, my bee litter. You heard me talk about how before I ever put them on game, on the species that I wanted to run, I was already doing some correction off game. I was already working on deer. And you heard me and Jerry in a podcast talk about this. So what happened is, even though in my mind, I wasn't being harsh with it, I wasn't overcorrecting, but I was giving correction out of the gate. And what's happened is I slowed the progress down because the dogs were hesitant about running the game that I wanted to, because I'd started with a negative, not a positive. And that's why sometimes when the dogs run off game, it's not worth the correction till you get them on the game that you want them on. Confidence comes from solving those problems. A dog that figures it out trusts himself more. He's going to be more confident. And to tie this into the last episode, talking about home and reset, and I didn't go into a lot of depth about putting dogs back where you trained them, putting dogs back where they started. It's like a full circle. Just like it resets you, that experience takes that dog back. And if you don't think that the same smells, the same scenery, the same routine doesn't bring you back, think about when you walk in your mom's house and she's making apple pie. You smell it, you see it, you remember it. All those things take you back. So sometimes we don't need to be in a rush to grow. Some things you just got to go through, not around. Give them that opportunity. Let them make a few mistakes. Most of the time, with very little interaction, they'll figure it out. Right? So if you got a young dog that's struggling right now, don't be too quick to step in. You might be 1 or 2 hunts away from him or her figuring it out. Back to Belle. Some of the best dogs that you've ever owned are the ones that had to learn the hard way. And you remember me telling the story about her running deer through 3 zip codes. She did that. Absolutely did that. I was told that I'd never get her broke off deer. I didn't break her off deer. She broke herself. And once she did, let me tell you, you couldn't melt her and pour her in a tea pitcher and pour her on a deer. She didn't care. And she didn't care if my other dogs were running one either. She'd go check them. She'd go do her own thing, or she'd come right back to you and say, all right, Dad, let's move on. That was all on her, not me. She did it. And looking back at the lessons that she taught me were patience. Sometimes getting out of the way. And how dogs figure things out on their own. So ask yourself, are you overhandling? Or are you letting your dog self-discover? Before we wrap this one up, I want to start something new going forward. Each week, we're going to feature a dog of the week. A story sent in by y'all. Could be a young dog figuring it out, like today's episode. Could be a veteran dog that taught you something. I've got a lot of stories on those. Or just one of those hunts you will never forget. And along with that, I'm going to start pulling in some training questions from you guys, from the Creekside crew, from the listeners. And I'm going to work them into the show. Real situations, real problems. And we're going to have real conversations about what works and what doesn't work. And give options. So if you've got a dog story or a question that you've been dealing with, send it my way at creeksidechroniclespodcast@gmail.com. That's Creekside Chronicles with an S, podcast@gmail.com. I want to hear what you're hunting. I want to hear what you're working on. And I want to hear what your dogs are teaching you. That's going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Creekside Chronicles. We appreciate you spending your time with us, whether you're in the truck, in the woods, or sitting by the creek just listening along. Thank you for walking this trail with us. And we got to say thank you to W Supply for hosting the podcast and supporting everything we do. Be sure to check them out and go to wsupply.com for all your hound hunting needs. Until next time, keep your dogs fed right, those leads tight, boots muddy, and we'll see you at the tree.
Tailgate drops before the light, coolers packed and the rig sitting right, tracking collars charged, beeping green, boots in the bed and the rifle's clean. Dog box rattling, engines hum, we're chasing bear till the day is done. Old ring barking like he knows what's near, nose to the wind, tail full of cheer. From the Virginia mountains to the Carolina clay, we're burning fuel and miles each day. Every turn's another tale, through mountain mist and paper trails. We see the sunset red in Tennessee, rise through the fog in old WV. North Carolina's pines echo loud with the cry of a hard-run hound. New York forest, Maine's deep snow, Vermont valleys where the black bears go. Truck keeps rolling, wheels don't care. We're chasing daylight, chasing bears. Rest stops few, the roads are long, but the fire in our hearts still burns strong. Wisconsin mornings cutting crisp and clear, Canada's wildwoods drawing near. Still got states we ain't run, but that hound dog fever won't let us quit. We see the sunset red in Tennessee, rise through the fall in old WV. North Carolina's pines echo loud with the cry of a hard-run hound. New York frost, Maine's deep snow, Vermont valleys where the black bears go. Truck keeps rolling, wheels don't care. We're chasing daylight, chasing bear. Gas station coffee, Alpha XL on the dash. Another back road, another bear track. Friends made fast and stories told slow. Under stars where only hunters go. We see the sunrise gold in Canadian air, and it sets on a trail down in Appalachia. Packing steel and leather, grit and care. We're built for the road and chasing bear. So load the dogs and slam the gate. There's a trail ahead, we won't be late. From dawn to dusk, we're always there. Chasing daylight, chasing them bears.